Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you like this video. It was made possible by donations from our supporters. If you're one of them, thank you so very, very much. If you're new to MBT and find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Tom. We're back with Tom Campbell Answers Your Questions. And some of these questions are from our Patreon subscribers, so I'm going to start with the first one from Dally Beth. When a loved one leaves this avatar, can their IUOC communicate with us in this reality? Instead of it being the LCS, before and after they've come back in another avatar. So I guess what she's asking is,
can it? She said, can it? And of course, can it is the same as saying, is it possible?
Right.
And of course, is it possible? The answer is yes. Almost everything is possible. Is it likely? The answer is no. And that's not likely, because mostly when people, after they die, they very quickly let go of that last life. They very quickly, it fades. And it's just not part of their reality anymore. And again, it's like a dream. You wake up in a dream and it's really there and it's emotional and it's awesome. But an hour later, you don't even remember most of it. And a day later, you just remember a few highlights. So that's what happens most of the time. So that's what is likely that it happens. But is it possible? Yes, of course, it's possible. Somebody might have that on their mind to the point that they hang on to it. Sometimes you have a dream that you don't let go of. You hang on to it and you remember that for a long time. Most of those dreams actually, though, aren't dreams. They're mostly out of bodies when that happens. But you can have a dream that somehow you get some kind of an attachment to a particular thing that happened or whatever, and you may hang on to it longer. So it's possible, yes, but generally that's not what happens. There was a lady who was, I think, a psychiatrist. I'm not sure of that, but she counseled parents on how to deal with their children, and she had a son who committed suicide. And she then got a medium to get her in touch with the son. And before her son committed suicide, and he was just evidently born with a very difficult brain chemistry. So he had issues. And the issues finally got so overwhelming for him that he committed suicide. But in any case, she was a committed materialist. But in her grief, she thought she would go to a medium. The medium got in touch with her son, and she started writing books about her conversations with her dead son. And it turned out it's exactly what she needed for several reasons. It helped her deal with the death because her son was still alive, still her son. They got to talk out kind of some issues that may have been between them that had no closure. So she got that. And the son told her all sorts of interesting things when the questions that she asked. And they were so interesting that she wrote books about it. And guess what? These books helped a lot of people understand children with mental issues and helped a lot of people see reality from a bigger picture. So it turned out to be a really good thing for everyone. Now, was that really Eric, her son, who died, but was still around and was still Eric and was still talking to his mom? Or was that the larger conscious system that was basically being Eric, thinking and talking and acting like Eric talked? And doing that because, one, the mother needed that. That was helping the mother deal with reality. So it was beneficial to her. And as it turned out, it was beneficial to a lot of people. It was a lifesaver for her. Otherwise, she would have been a depressed person, because of her son. That's a very hard thing to deal with for a, a parent to deal with a child that commits suicide. It's very difficult. And it helped her, it helped others, it was very positive. And that's exactly the kind of things the larger consciousness system does. But now, would it be a good idea to crash that party and say, oh, folks, you got it all wrong. That's not really your son. That's the larger consciousness system. No, of course not. Let that be a metaphor that works well. Let it be her son. Let it work that way. Explain it that way. Write the book that way. That's fine. It's easier for people to understand it, and it does help open people's minds. You don't have to get them a philosophy that's very abstract is the word I'm looking for. You don't need to explain a very abstract theory to them. That's not what they need at that time. They need comfort. They need connection. So I think it's wonderful that it was done that way. And I think it was very good for lots of people.
Well, Tom, I know you've mentioned before that that information that was the son is permanently recorded. Now, when you say the LCS will play that information, isn't the LCS animating that database to the finest detail, even to the point of answering a question that would be likely the answer
Sure.
for something in the future? If you see it
Absolutely.
as
Yes.
animating that information, which is really what we are anyway, we're animated information, you really can't tell the difference there.
You really can't tell the difference. So trying to make a big deal out of or get into an argument about was that Eric or was that not is useless. That is not even a good argument to have. It's it's um, it's just a waste of time. It's not important, not significant, doesn't help anybody go anywhere or do anything. It's just not relevant. So that's not the point. That's what I mean. I'm glad that they did it the way they did it. I'm not saying, oh, yeah, but that's wrong. No, that's not wrong. It's just the way they're looking at it. And that's fine. That's good. Because they probably wouldn't have been able to get as much value out of a abstract theory that they got out of the dead son talking to his mother. That played a whole lot better, more concrete, more connected. And so it was a very good thing. And as you say, there's really not a big difference if you look at what's happening. So what are we? What am I? I'm a piece of the larger consciousness system. And I call that an individuated unit of consciousness. And this piece of the larger consciousness system is, playing Tom Campbell, saying all the things Tom Campbell says, making all of Tom Campbell's choices. And okay, am I Tom Campbell or am I the larger consciousness system? You see, that's kind of a dumb question. It's not a question that has any real significance. I'm a part of the larger consciousness system. So you could say, well, really what I am is a piece of the larger consciousness system. So I'm the larger consciousness system, but I'm also Tom Campbell.
If
Oh, but which one's the
everything,
real you? And it just doesn't, it
yeah,
doesn't mean anything. So yes,
if we're all
all we,
information,
yeah,
then
it's all information. Source of the
that's all there is.
information is not that critical. Deal with the information, learn from the information, and so the answer to that is yes, it's possible. No, it's not likely, but it really doesn't matter anyway. It's not a distinction that's important.
It's
That's what
still
we are.
information.
We're, if you like to say us, we individuated units of consciousness, you can imagine us, we're like a mouth through which the larger consciousness system talks. Well, that's true. Whether that mouth has a physical avatar behind it or whether it doesn't have a physical avatar behind it. When the larger conscious system plays a character, we call it an NPC, a non-player character. Now, is there any way for you to tell an NPC from some other character that's a player character? No, they're exactly the same. Does that NPC have personality? Yes. Is their personality and their being and everything, have continuity? Yes. Do they have a history? Can they tell you about their grandmother and their great-grandmother and where they came from? And yes, they can do all that stuff. What is it that they can do that we can't? Really? Nothing. Because the system is going to play that NPC within the rules of this virtual reality, just like we have to act within the rules of the virtual reality, and it's going to play it within the consistency of that defined character. So whether that character is somebody who has lived, just died a long time ago, or is still living, you see, it's a real fine point that really doesn't amount to much of anything. So it's possible, yes, it's likely, no, but the big answer is it really doesn't matter. That we tend to make a big deal of that. Yeah, okay, that's the LCS and it's acting like Eric, but I want to talk to the real Eric. Well, you see, this real Eric is really the kind of larger consciousness system, too.
Well, the real Eric was the larger consciousness system before it was Eric. So if you want real, it's the IUOC and the one.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, it's a very small, subtle point that doesn't really make a lot of difference in any
Look
case.
at it
It's
from
just we humans have this idea of what's real. You see, just like this reality, which is a virtual reality that isn't any more real than a dream or anything else, but this reality we call PMR, physical matter reality, the physical universe. All right, well, we define that's real in our minds and our beliefs, that's real. And things like night dreams and daydreams and out-of-body experiences and all of that stuff is not real. Those are like fake realities that aren't real. Well, that's wrong. This is a misunderstanding of what is real. What is real? Consciousness is real. Information is real. What else? Nothing. That's it. That's what's real. So once you outgrow the small definition of what's real is what's physical, and that other things are not real, and that if the larger conscious system is pretending to be Eric, that's not real. That's not really Eric. That's the larger conscious system. Well, that's because of your small definition of what's real. When you see that Eric, when he was here as a physical person, was also, like you and I, a piece of that larger consciousness system. That's the same. That's what he was, and he was being, he was an avatar. Avatars come and go. Our rule set has avatars have a finite lifetime. But consciousness does not. Consciousness is immortal. So it goes on and on and on. And then we could say, well, is the real Eric really now Susie Smith, who was just born 6 months after Eric died? Is that the real Eric? No. The real Eric was just Eric, and he had that avatar, and the consciousness worked through the avatar that was Eric and did those things. Eric lived, Eric died, and that's gone. But we still have consciousness. And the consciousness that played Eric, okay, that made all Eric's choices, is now making choices for another character someplace. Now, is that real character, Susie Smith? Oh, now it's the real Susie Smith. Now, it used to be the real Eric, but no, it's not like that. Those are just characters that are played in a long series of characters that we play in order to grow up, in order to become. So that consciousness, that IUOC, that was both Eric and Susie Smith has maybe had tens of thousands of those sorts of things, you see.
I think
And
what's
now,
interesting when you say the free will awareness unit is that part of the consciousness that comes from the qualities of the IUOC. Now, playing Eric is totally unique. It's a totally unique mix of the qualities of that IUOC that are particularly Eric. So
mhm,
when you say a person is unique, we need to celebrate that. They are using a different mix of qualities that will show them a different way of looking at things and a different experience base.
mhm.
Everyone is unique. That's so fascinating. I know you've said that before. All right. Her second question is, I heard in your podcast that it is an individual when an IUOC enters the fetus. Can an avatar function without an IUOC operating it? What she's really asking, is that growing baby viable before it's born without the free will awareness unit
Sure,
logging onto it?
sure it is. It's viable because it's part of a simulation. It's viable because it's a part of biology. It's part of the rule set. So the rule set will have that baby will be born, that baby will be born and will probably cry and will need to eat and do all those things that babies do because that's part of the rule set, biology. That's the way the system works. And some consciousness will make choices for that child because consciousness supports this particular virtual reality and it's going to have a conscious play every player. So the rule set is what creates the baby. It's just part of a simulation. And in that simulation, our biology does that. Okay, so the rule set supports having the baby, but then it takes a consciousness to make the choices for that baby. And the system will always find a piece of consciousness to do that. Okay, but that, another way I could say it is that, look at you and I. We are bodies, right? We're avatars, but we're consciousness playing this avatar. And people would think that, well, it's our brain that runs our body. The brain doesn't run our body. Matter of fact, no brain is ever rendered unless somebody's head is split open and one can see it. And then it's only rendered in as much as people look at it. Okay, if you want to go dig into it and see where the parts of the brain that do this and that are, well, then it has to be rendered in more detail than just the outer layer of it. So those things aren't even rendered. They're not real. There is no spoon. There is no physical reality. Only a simulation. And then a piece of consciousness makes the choices for each entity that is birthed in this simulation. So as the population in the simulation grows, well, the number of free will awareness units is growing too.
So, Tom, you're saying that the free will awareness unit must be present as the baby forms, or can it log on later?
It can log on later. The free will awareness unit will log on when that baby has enough of an information stream to make it worthwhile. When that baby is just a little thing that's a half an inch long and about like this, and embryo looks just like a chicken embryo or a lizard embryo, it's really hard to tell the differences. It's kind of a big lump here and then a tail. When it's at that form, it doesn't have a data stream. It's not thinking, it's not yet cognitive, it's not yet experiencing. But when it gets to the point that it's developed enough that it has all the biological pieces necessary have grown to be able to process information, even if it's only a dim awareness of the difference between light and dark, day and night, or just hear sounds, even if they're just a mumble off in the distance, or hear music. That mom's belly doesn't keep all sounds and music and forces and things out. The baby has some things going on in its environment. It has a fluid it can swim in. It can do somersaults. It's got this cord. It's got things in its environment, and it can punch mom from the inside and kick mom from the inside. And that mom is kind of elastic, and it kicks out a little bump and pops back, and the baby can play with that. So that's all getting information in a data stream. And at that point, then an individuated unit of consciousness can create this free will awareness unit that can log on and have those experiences, learn from those experiences. Or if it doesn't want to, it might log on while after the baby's born. It might log on a week after the baby's born. It doesn't have to log on right away. The babies don't do a whole lot in the first couple of weeks, that they're born. It's mainly just biology still doing its thing, and the biology kind of works on automatic, if you want. They're not making a lot of choices at that point, just gathering information. So the body just keeps on keeping on like a body should, doing the things that it should. They cry, they fuss, they pee, they poop, they do all the stuff they need to do, they eat. But all of that is just has input. So they could be logged on to that, or they could be logged on after that. That's not really a big deal when the free will awareness unit actually logs on. And you may have a free will awareness unit in some cases that logs on right away, and then 6 months later decides that they want out. Oh, baby has a brain tumor. That's not what I wanted for my next life. I wanted something different. I've already had a hard one the last time, I dealt with. I only had one leg. I want to have a whole body this time. So then maybe they'll find some other free will awareness unit from some IUSC that say, well, I'll take that. That would be a good challenge for me. So, again, we're talking about what is possible, not what is typical or what's likely. What's likely is that the free will awareness unit logs on soon after there's actual input. There's experience to be had, lights, sounds, connections with people, mind-to-mind connection with mom and dad. There's
Are
things
those
that can be
things
done.
are those things important? The sounds, the connections, the emotions that it picks up on. It must be important to have a positive environment. Does it affect how the
Yes,
child views things?
sure it does. That's part of their learning. When that free will awareness unit logs on, it has no experience because it doesn't get the intellectual part of its past. It doesn't take that with it. So it arrives with no experience whatsoever. So if it's in there and what it hears all the time is mom and dad screaming at each other and fighting and loud noises and that sort of thing, it's going to feel less secure. It's in an environment that's harsh. It's in an environment that doesn't feel good. It picks up mind to mind with how the parents are feeling and thinking and what they're doing. And if it finds happiness and joy and it feels wanted, even though it's only, so many months pregnant, but if it can get in touch, then that helps it have a very positive attitude. If it finds stress and difficulty and anger and all that, that makes it very wary of what it's getting into. It's not going to be a very nice situation. So now it probably comes in insecure. It comes in not sure. It comes in having difficulty trusting, that sort of thing. So sure, that all makes a big difference because once it starts getting a data stream, in other words, it's getting experience, it can experience things, that experience starts to form its world. That's its first experience. And it starts creating in its own mind what the world is like from those experiences. And it keeps doing that all the way through its lifetime. It learns and it grows and it learns new things. So in the beginning, it's learning things like, this is mom, this is dad, this is my house, this is my dog, this is an apple, this is an orange. And it learns the words, it learns the language, it learns that things have names, and that begins to form a pattern of reality. That's what our reality is how we interpret the data, you see. So yes, it's very important. If that mom is always depressed and unhappy and does her whole pregnancy crying and upset, then that baby will be different than if that mother were happy and full of joy during
And if
that
that
time.
baby doesn't survive, it just goes to um,
Sure, if that baby were to
another
die,
situation.
then the free will awareness unit is taken out, right? Which is what happens when they die. The free will awareness unit separates from that avatar. The avatar's dead, and the free will awareness unit returns to its IUOC, and the IUOC will then pick another one. Say, okay, that one didn't last long. Let's try another one. It's about life and continuing it. And an early death, a child's death, as devastating as that is, and people, it's a really horrible thing when you lose a child. But from the point of view of the child, don't have much investment in this lifetime yet. And for them to start over, it's not really that big a deal for them. It's a really big deal for the parents and the grandparents and everybody else and the brothers and the sisters, because a potential brother or sister or son and daughter came and didn't make it. And that's very, very sad, because they had all that potential that it could have become, and it didn't have a chance to make it. So that's a very sad thing. But from the viewpoint of the free will awareness unit, it's just something that didn't work out. You do this hundreds, you do this thousands of times. Some of them don't work out. Some of them just don't work out. And when they don't, well, you do another one. So you have to take the big view. When you take the big view, it's not really such a horrible thing, but it leaves the parents and the other siblings very disappointed, and it kind of keeps them from knowing and enjoying and having that other person in their life. So it's a very sad thing, but it's not it's much sadder for the people who are left behind than it is for the child that just has to go find somebody, find some other um,
Of course,
place to have another life. So
and
that's
it could.
part of our culture. Has this belief that it's a Christian thing. Has this belief that you get one shot at life. That's it.
Right, right.
So when you get that one shot, then it's like, well, hell, this was little Susie. She had one shot
Yeah.
and she didn't make it past her first year.
Hmm.
Well, and then that's really horrible. A whole life there, it's like wasted. But there's nothing wasted. Little Susie, it's not going to be little Susie. Next time, maybe it's going to be George, but it'll find another place to incarnate, another experience packet to have, and it goes on.
And it could
So
very well
from
be the same parents, right?
could very well be the same
It's a
parents.
possibility as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was
Yeah.
a connection to those parents, it might be the same parents, just at a later time. So we tend to go through life with a very little picture of reality. And in that little picture, we have a lot of beliefs. And those beliefs often cause us to have fears and trauma and upset and anger and all sorts of things, just because we have this little tiny picture of what's going on and what matters and what doesn't and what's important. So a bigger picture, actually, I think in all cases, once you have a bigger picture, you see that life is really more positive and more fun and less of less of difficulty and less problem than you thought. The big picture is usually a happy big picture. Oh, little Susie's fine. She's just not going to be Susie. She's going to be somebody else, but she's just fine.
Oh, thank you, Tom. That's a very good answer. Thanks very much.